Guys, today we're going to look at activity 1.1.7, traversing turtles, and we're going to learn some things about lists and for loops. Okay, so the first thing that you need to do, if you didn't already, is complete your vocab because you need to know those words while we're going through this. Okay, our goals for this section is to use a list to represent a collection of data, add and remove elements to and from the list, and use a for loop in order to iterate through all of the elements of a list. Okay, so those are the things we're going to accomplish. First of all, we're going to talk about what is a list. Okay, a list is just what it sounds like. It's a list of items. Another word they use for list is array. So what we're going to do is before we get into this, I'm going to show you guys a video. This gentleman from the University of Texas, Austin at the University of Texas. I took a class with this school last year, and it was fantastic. And his video on arrays really does a great job at explaining them. So let's take a minute and just watch this video. And I'm gonna embed it in this video, and I'm also gonna put the link in your Google Classroom.
Let's talk about one-dimensional arrays. An array is a collection of data, all of one data type. It is stored in contiguous memory in the computer, which just means side by side. When memory is allocated to an array, it is fixed or static, not flexible to grow or shrink. An array is very easy to manage using a process called indexing. Here are some examples of arrays. As you can see, there are two ways you might see an array declared, either using the square brackets, as in this first example, or by using the word array to indicate it. The last line shows a typical way to instantiate an array using the curly braces, with values inside separated by commas. The name you call the array is totally up to you, depending on the meaning you want it to indicate. Here are some other array types for decimals, strings, characters, or Boolean values. You need to know how to process an array, specifically how to create one with the data type that you need, use a length method or process to check to see how many elements it contains, to access individual elements, either to use them in a process or to change the element value, and then use a loop to access all of the elements in the array, either to output them or use them in a process of some kind. This example creates a new array of integers, initially empty, but the elements are filled by default with all zeros. Some languages will have a method that gives you the length of an array, or use a process to determine the length. Arrays are zero index based, which means the first element is in position 0, and the last element is in position length -1. This is a very important aspect of arrays that you must be aware of, so that you don't run the risk of stepping out of bounds when trying to process an array. To assign a value to a place in an array, you name the array and use the square brackets with the value inside to indicate which position you want to access, and then use an assignment statement to make the change. The value in brackets is called the index. Often, you know from the start what elements you want in an array, and what you see here is a way to instantiate an array, which just means to declare it and to give it beginning values all in one step. To output elements from an array, use the same indexing process mentioned before, as you can see with these examples. To change array elements, again, use the indexing process to make the desired assignment. If you need to output the entire array, use a loop like this one. It is very handy to use a T-chart like the one you see here to trace through the behavior of a loop in order to predict the output, a technique you really need to master when processing loops. Here you see a typical process used with elements of a numeric array, adding up all of the values. You would use this if the array contained the grades for a student, and you wanted to add them all up to find the average, after which you would divide the sum by the length of the array to complete the process. In summary, you need to know these characteristics of an array, and you need to know how to do these processes using an array.
Okay, so just a quick review from the video. Your arrays and a list are the exact same thing. Okay, they just use the word array. And in Python, we use the word array. What we're going to do now is we're going to do some steps to show you how to work with these lists. Okay, so let's look at our list method. Review the code in the code editor below. Can you guess what it does? So let's read through this. New list equals dog, cat, mouse, bird, monkey, print new list. So if I click the play button, if I click run, what do you think this is going to do? Go ahead and give it a try. Exactly, it just prints our list. Okay, it prints our brackets and everything inside of them. So when you run this program, it shows the individual list items in single quotes. In Python, you can use single or double quotes for strings of literals. And literals is a fixed value in source code, such as the number 5 or hello. Okay, so run the program to do what you expected it to. The square brackets contain all of the items in the list. Each item is separated by a comma, is called an element. Okay, so each one of these things in this list is called an element. The second line of code prints out all of the list elements defined in the list. So again, a list element and an individual value in a list that is assigned a unique index. So if we look at our College Board connection, you'll see that they do the same thing. So they have the name of their list is their variable, and then they list their items in the brackets. Okay, this creates a new list containing the values value 1, value 2, value 3, so on and so forth. If they just have the variable name and the brackets, then that gives them an empty list. Okay, and then you can also create copies of lists inside of copies of lists. So the next part of your textbook says, if you wanted your program to later add an element to the end of the list, we're going to use something called the append method. So let's watch this real quick. And there's no sound to this. So we're talking about appending to the end of a list. So they want us to append the word lion. So they simply put in animals underscore list dot append lion, and then that will add lion to the end of the list. Okay. So that dot append is how we add things to the end of our list. So here it says, run the program to see how it adds lion. We have a list, dog, cat, mouse, bird, and monkey. We have done a dot append lion, and it says print list now is, and then print the list. So if we push play, list now is, and then it appended the word lion. Okay. In our College Board, we would just use append. It would say new list, and then it would say lion. So same thing, just a different way of wording it. What if you wanted to get the last item that was placed into the list and remove it, much like you would grab the top item out of a basket or a bag? The pop method removes the last element from a list and assigns it to a variable. Okay, so popping an item off. So here we can see we have this new list, and we have new list dot pop. Okay, so all that's going to do is pop off this last thing in the list. So once the next line for us is print popped item, print the list is now, and print the new list with that item not on it. So if we're printing our popped item, we should print monkey. If we're printing our list after we've popped monkey off, it should say dog, cat, mouse, and bird. So if we push play, we get monkey and dog, cat, mouse, and bird. Now let's look at a for loop. A for loop is very similar to your while loop, okay? Your for loop is going to iterate through the steps. It's going to complete a task for a specific item in the list, okay? It's going to complete a task for a specific item in a list. We also here talk about a loop variable. So in each iteration step, a variable set to a value in a sequence or other data collection. So we're going to have a loop variable in order to make our loop work. So let's look at our example. For the variable in list, this is our body of our loop. So we have for and in are our keywords. There's our loop variable. This creates our list. Don't forget the colon. You know, that's my downfall. Don't forget the colon. And then we have an indentation before we put in the body of our loop. Okay. So examine the code in the code editor. Any code that is indented directly beneath the for statement is called the body of the loop. So if we look here, the body of our loop is on line 4 and it is print animal. It will be executed in each iteration of the loop. Notice how the for loop is written with the loop variable assigned as animal. Okay, so our loop variable is animal. And the code to be run during the loop is after the for statement. What do you think this loop will do? Well, let's look at this. So we have on line 2, we have a new list. Dog, cat, mouse, bird, and monkey. For animal in new list, print the animal. Okay, what do you think is going to happen when we click the play button here? Let's go ahead and click it. So what it did was it just printed each one of our list items, but in a list form instead of inside the brackets with the commas, okay? So what's different about the output versus print the new list? It's in a list form. It's no longer in the commas. The code picked each item in the list and assigned it the variable named animal, and then it printed one at a time. The for loop continues to execute as long as it has elements in it called an iteration. So what we don't see behind the scenes, what we don't see is that it says for animal in new list, print animal, it prints dog. Then it goes back and reads line 3 again. For animal in new list, print animal, it prints cat. Goes back to line 3 again. And it continues through that cycle until it prints the entire list. Okay. The for loop assigns each element in the list a loop. What is the loop variable in this code? So looking at your code, which one of these parts in line 3 and line 4 is the for variable? And the answer is the word animal. Okay, so let's see how the College Board looks at for loops. So theirs looks very similar for each item in a list. And then you give the statement, just don't forget your curly cues when you're looking at the College Board version. Okay. Add the following indented line of code before the for statement and above the print animal statement. So we're going to copy this. Whoops. Oh my goodness. I'm going to copy this code. It says below the for and above the print animal. So come up here. Print next animal. So how is that going to change your printout over here on the right? What is that going to look like? Let's look. Okay, so it just gives us a heading. We just added in a heading between each animal. Okay. If you were to add 2 more print statements indented underneath the for statement, how many lines of output would you see? And we would see 20, 4 lines for each of the 5 times it goes through it. Okay, so the next set of steps, we're going to do 9 and 10 together, and then I'm going to set you guys free. Lists and for loops go naturally together. You can create many elements in a list. Up until now, we've been using the default shape, the turtle of the arrow. Here, we're going to loop through a list of other shapes. Okay, so let's look at our code. First, we're importing our turtle. We're creating a list, my turtles, and we created an empty list by putting in those empty brackets. Turtle shapes, we have arrow, turtle, circle, square, triangle, classic. Our turtle colors. For S in turtle shapes, T equals turtle, dot turtle shapes equals S. Okay, my turtles append the T. Starting at 0, 0. For T in my turtles, we're going to go to X, Y and go right 45, forward 50. And then we're going to start move excuse me, move plus 50 on the X and plus 50 on the Y. So they want you to copy this into your Visual Studio Code. And then we're going to do some exploring. So steps 10, we're going to do some changes. So first, let's run this and see what it does. And we get all these turtles, right? And we can't really see what we're doing here because this is small, and this is why they want it in Virtual Studio Code. Kind of runs off of our page, doesn't it? Okay, but we get all these turtles and they make their lines. So we get the first turtle, then it goes to the iteration again and gives us the second turtle, and iterates again in the third and the fourth and the fifth, and we get all of our turtles. Step number 10, at line 6, there is nothing between the brackets. That means my turtle list has nothing in it. It's an empty list. Later in the code, we're appending or adding the turtles to the list. So we started here with 0. Here, we are now appending the turtle shapes, right? Because here we assigned the turtle shapes, and here we're appending them. So we keep adding a new turtle shape. B, lines 9 and 10 create 2 lists with reference to shapes and colors. And lines 12 through 14 populates or adds to the My Turtle list. The for loop assigns it as a variable S, iterates it through the shapes. On each iteration, the loop variable S gets a shape from the list. Then a turtle object is created with the shape. And finally, a new turtle is appended to the list. Okay, so step 11, run this code and see what it does, which we've already done. Add comments in your own words at lines 16, 20, and 26. So I'll give you guys time to do that in a moment. The next part you're going to do on your own. So it's your turn. Now that you've examined the code and understand how a for loop is used to create and draw different shapes, using turtles of different shapes, you're going to modify the code to change the color of the turtles. Delete colors available to the turtles, add more turtles, change program parameters, and see the results. So steps 12 all the way down to the end, which is step 18, are going to take you through some steps that I want you guys to work on your own. And when you're all said and done, you should have something that looks similar to 15, I believe. And there is help here if you need it. Okay. So again, completing this last section, it's your own, it's your turn on your own, okay? When you're all finished, you're going to, again, take a video, copy and paste, however you want to show me your code, and upload that to your Google Classroom, and also complete the Google form. I hope you guys have a great week and have fun playing with your turtles.